welcome to the Thanksgiving edition, the Canadian Thanksgiving edition of the DFO Rundown. It's episode 244, brought to you by Betano. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. The game starts now at betano.ca. I'm Jason Gregor alongside Frank Saravalli, and we have some news. We will preview the Central Division. We've already done the Pacific and the Metro. We'll do the Central today and then the Atlantic later this week. But Frank, let's start with the big news. Rasmus Dahlin, 8 years, $11 million with the Buffalo Sabres. They've locked up other guys, and but Cousins and Thompson definitely a little bit lower than what Dahlin comes in at.
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, I saw the comparison right away. People were saying on Twitter, well, oh, look what Jake Sanderson just signed for. Why is Rasmus Dahlin $3 million more than that? The answer is because they're not comparables. One was buying way more UFA years. Dahlin was coming off of a bridge deal. The last 3 years, he's been making $6 million a year, or last two. This year, he's entering the final year of that deal, which will pay him $6 million. So people were saying, well, is he worth it to jump up into the $11 million range, which is higher than every defenseman in the league except for two others, Erik Karlsson and Drew Doughty? My answer to that is you must not have watched a lot of Sabres games, because Dahlin is that good and he's only going to get better. I think it's been I don't want to say slow build to this point, but he has certainly lived up to that number one pick that he was selected at a few years ago. And it's been in fits and starts, I think, for the Sabres as a whole, but they've gotten to where they want to get to. And I used this term on Twitter earlier today when talking about the deal, and fans didn't like that I used the phrase. And so if I offended anyone, that certainly wasn't my intention. But to say that Dahlin and Powers are the Sabres' twin towers, I think is an affectionate and nice way to say what they've developed on their back end, because those two guys are going to be staples and they're going to be standing there for a long time.
Okay, I guess if people want to try to make the connection, but the Twin Towers is a reference to defensemen in hockey many times before, when you have two big, steady defensemen on the back end. So I understood what you were referencing to. I'm pretty sure it had nothing to do with September 11th. You know, it's interesting because I'm sure people will look and say, well, if you're Owen Power, you could ask for the same. But as you mentioned, Frank, you know, UFA years matter. It's like when people always try to compare contracts, you have to take in buying UFA years. You just have to. It's a reality of the cap world, and UFAs get paid more. It's just, especially top end UFAs. Obviously bottom end guys, not so much, but top end UFA guys get paid more. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. And look, I mean, Cale Makar is at $9.5 million. Is Cale Makar a better defenseman than Rasmus Dahlin? The answer is yes. Cale Makar is the best defenseman in the world. But as we were just talking about, he was coming off of entry level and had to buy a bunch of RFA years instead of UFA years. And there's a limit as to how much you can get. It's kind of hard to just vault right into the $11 million range right out of entry level. It doesn't really happen. So
except
that's
David.
Yeah, and that's a different case. He's the best player in the world.
Yeah. So you're right. It's rare. You know what? Well, the cap's going to go up. Rasmus Dahlin, his play continues to improve, and you know, even if he maintains at the level he's at, you'll probably get decent value over the term of that contract. But you know, Buffalo's got a lot of their guys locked up. I think Owen Power is going to be next.
It might not be value. I want to stop you. It might not be value, but it's appropriate.
Yeah, I don't. Well, it doesn't have to be great value.
I don't think there's no discount there in buying long term.
No,
it's just that you have a really key piece of your team that isn't going anywhere. And now Owen Power, who's entering the final year of his entry-level deal, which at the end of it, just to keep in mind, will be a 10-2C, meaning no ARB and no offer sheet rights. You know, if he were to sign the same length contract, 8 years, that would take both these guys through 2032. That's a big, big deal for the Sabres, and certainly a lot less to worry about.
When I say good value, Frank, I mean, like, look at the fact that when Drew Doughty signed his contract, and then look at when Erik Karlsson signed his, and then look at what the cap overall is going to be during the term of Dahlin's contract. I think he's not going to be a bargain basement deal. Fine. It's not like it's going to be Nathan McKinnon or David Pastrnak or Leon Draisaitl, but I don't think it's going to be a gross overpay is what I'm saying.
Agreed. No, totally. And that makes a lot of sense because consider when those guys signed, the cap was 81.5, 82.5, whatever that range. At some point in the very near future, 3-4 years, it's going to be $100 million.
Well, when Doughty signed, I bet you the salary cap was closer to like 70. His contract has been around a long time.
Doesn't it feel that way?
Oh, yeah, it has been. So also yesterday, a big day as teams get, today, of course, final rosters have to be in by 3 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And 47 players placed on waivers yesterday. Any surprises?
Not really. I think teams were kind of squirming. And a couple of them still are as we get close to roster submission deadline of how do I make sure I don't give anyone any assets for free? I think everyone has kind of been sitting here going, I don't really want to hand the Tampa Bay Lightning a goalie. This is the last thing I want, especially if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. Martin Jones went unsigned well into August, late August. No one wanted him. The Toronto Maple Leafs step up, give him $875. He's got a roster bonus of $100,000 that's payable on October 10th. And they're thinking it'd be nice to have some organizational depth. And then Vasilevsky goes down. And it's like, wait, are we handing a division rival a goalie that played 48 games for the Kraken last year? So I think the thought process and idea was, let's see if we can get an asset for this guy that at least if we're going to lose the depth that we get, even a little something for him. Obviously, that's not going to materialize. The Lightning, the Avs, all these other teams are sitting here going, just put them on waivers. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, and we'll see. Martin Jones did play a lot of games in Seattle last year, but, didn't have a great save percentage, .895, I think it was. So, Tampa Bay, I think, could make sense in a short term. It is interesting. Toronto puts that extra $100,000 bonus in just because they're hoping that my team is like, I don't know if I want to pay that right away. Obviously, Tampa Bay, I'm pretty sure, doesn't care, but it's a small little thing to try to, appease the player and appease maybe a team saying, I don't want to do it. But you know what? Every year, like last week, Ottawa fans were losing their minds because they were going to lose
Thompson.
Yeah, well, they lost Thompson, who now got put back on waivers today by Anaheim, or yesterday.
Right, so what I'm saying is that kind of goes to show you, like, maybe the Sens and how they viewed him isn't really that different than even one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, but remember, Docker was on it, and also Sokolov, and they were, oh my goodness, that's 3 prospects. They're going to lose them all. Well, if Ottawa wants to claim, what's his name again back here, Lassie Thompson, they can have him if no one else claims him and put him in the minors. So they might end up with all 3 of them still. So do you expect anybody, and were you surprised by the Detroit Zach Austin Reese?
Not really necessarily surprised that he didn't get a PTO in Carolina. I think it's been a bit of a challenge for them because they're the only team in the NHL that doesn't have an AHL affiliate. They have nowhere to put these guys. And that's actually been, I don't want to say problematic for him, but it's definitely been more difficult than it's needed to be for every other franchise. They've had to send guys to the ECHL, guys that they liked on PTOs that were maybe willing to take a 2-way deal. You can't really sign it because there's nowhere to place them. So that's not easy. But no, to come through and sign in Detroit, it was only a matter of time before someone scooped him up. I'm not saying he's a game breaker or anything, but a really competent 4th-line player that can skate. Double-digit goals last year. Someone's going to sign him if he's only looking for a 2-way.
And there was a trade. Sam Lafferty goes to Vancouver for a 5th rounder. Toronto, obviously, that's just a salary cap dump. They are trying to get under the cap. Obviously, they're going to put 2 guys on LTIR in Murray and Muzzin. That's $10.3 million. But we'll see what they do with some juggling. Will Mitten stay around there to start the season? 19-year-olds in the NHL. It happens every now and then, but it's rare to be a successful teenager.
Yeah, and they've got a PTO that is in need of a contract. By all accounts, Noah Gregor has had a good camp, and they're I'm sure they're in the process, like a few other teams are with other PTOs, of trying to nail down their cap situation. Look at the Edmonton Oilers and Adam Ernie. You've got Austin Watson in Tampa. Pittsburgh has Libor Hayek there, as well as Mark Pysyk. There's a whole bunch of PTOs who are sitting here on the eve of the regular season saying, when's it going to be my turn?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting about Edmonton. The injury to Marcus Niemelainen, he wasn't going to make the team, but because he's injured, they can't send him down to the minors. It's not a serious enough injury right now to put him on LTIR. They'll reevaluate him in a week and see. But, that kind of puts them in a spot where they might not have had to put Peterson or Lavoie on waivers had Niemelainen not been injured, because he would have went down and they would have kept one of them. And so now they got to make a decision here. They'll find out the health of McLeod and Kulak and Ekholm, and I think that's going to play a part in what they decide to do here in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, and I talked about this with Ken Holland on Frankly Speaking, which dropped today on Canadian Thanksgiving. I went one-on-one with Jay Woodcroft and Ken Holland as I wrapped up my Western Canadian training camp preview tour. And the fact of the matter is the Oilers are just in a way different place than they were 3 years ago, 5 years ago. It's not about developing anymore. It's about go time, and it's about putting the best roster possible together to try and chase a Stanley Cup. And so to say that the Oilers, want to lose Raphael Lavoie, I think is totally inaccurate. But here's the truth is, with where he's at in his development path, they can't really afford to give him 80 games or 82 games to try and figure it out. And so I think part of their thought process was, we may have to rip this Band-Aid off at some point. Might as well try and do it at a time when there's 46 other guys on waivers on Sunday that hopefully he passes through and we'd like to keep him. But if he gets claimed, that's just the risk that you have to take. First off, for cap flexibility and those reasons. You mentioned the Niemelainen injury, and that's not very timely for them in terms of their cap situation. But there's not a lot of space to go around, so you have to make hard decisions. And if it wasn't now for Raphael Lavoie in October, it would have been 3 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now, and you'd be doing it at a time where he might be the only guy on waivers that day, the only guy to make a decision on.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I think we're going to see, Frank, by today, you might see 7 or 8 teams with a 21-man roster, maybe even 20 for some, to start the season as they juggle the salary cap. And I'm sure the capologists are very excited about the increase in cap space starting a year from now. So it'll be a lot easier for them to jumble it. Now let's get to our preview. We will start we're going in the Central Division today. If you missed shout out to all of the Islander fans. We see you and we see your passion. It's great. Islander fans are fired up that we didn't have them making the postseason. But I just want to point out one thing. Every year since 2014, there has been a turnover of 5 teams who didn't make the playoffs, who then made the playoffs the next year. One of them last year was Vegas. They won the cup. So the odds are there's going to be 4 or 5 fan bases right now. Your team made the playoffs last year, and now you're annoyed because we're not picking them to make the playoffs this year. And I don't even have 4. I didn't have 5. I had 4 teams that were in that are out, and then vice versa. So just want to point that out.
You said since 2014?
Yeah.
That's a great stat.
Yeah. So
say it one more time so everyone can process it.
So since 2014, every year there's 5 new playoff teams who weren't in the playoffs the year before. So if you're a Pittsburgh fan, you're a Buffalo fan, you're a Calgary fan, you're a Vancouver fan, you might say, hey, this is good for us. The odds will tell us we got a chance to get back in. Washington, maybe. Ottawa.
That's a classic Jason Gregor stat, because anecdotally in my head, and I've actually said this a bunch of times, I've been saying every year 6 teams make the playoffs that really we thought would have no business being in the playoffs. Yeah. And every year 6 teams that were like, yeah, they're a stone cold mortal lock. Those teams end up missing. So it's interesting how it, just in my head, I thought that was the case, but the data of what you're saying kind of backs that up, that,
oh yes,
you just don't know.
No, not well. Look at New Jersey and Seattle. They had 40-point improvements last year from the year before to make it into the playoffs. And then you throw in Vegas, who had missed now Vegas, of course, just missed it, but still, like Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa. In the East, especially, there's lots of teams that go up and down. I think in the West, Calgary and Vancouver are probably the two most likely to get back in, but don't count out the St. Louis Blues, right? Like, who knows if the Blues bounce back. So it'll be interesting to there. So let's start in the Central, Frank. Now, here's one team. Sorry, Blackhawk fans. I don't see you making that big of an improvement this year. There will be an improvement. Obviously, I think there'll be an improvement in excitement level because the Blackhawks have made a lot of changes. Frank, some significant additions to their team. Obviously, Connor Bedard being number one, Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, Corey Perry, Ryan Donato are all in. Some defensemen who played there last year at the end, so I don't include them necessarily as new. But what do you make of the Blackhawks? How improved do you think they can be?
I still think they're in for one more year of pain before they can begin to turn the corner. And I think Bedard is going to be so good this year that they're going to have to turn the corner more quickly than they probably even envisioned or planned. It's a good problem to have. I mean, I said this last year that they have now accomplished, I think, the most difficult part of the rebuild. You rebuild, you tear everything down to get a chance, a prayer at getting a player of this caliber. So it's going to be a lean year. Their defense in particular is really thin, but I like some of the changes that they've made to provide a bit of a supporting cast for Connor Bedard. And I think Taylor Hall he makes all the sense in the world. Not only do I think he still has some game left, but having been a number one overall pick, and not just being a number one overall pick, but having already been in this situation to help bring along another number one overall pick, as Taylor Hall was asked to do by the Edmonton Oilers with Connor McDavid, this guy's the perfect person to put on his wing. He understands the pressure. He understands everything that comes with it, the eyeballs. And to get him for free, it's an awesome move.
Yeah. I think it's important, Blackhawk fans. Sidney Crosby, 2006, Penguins 29th out of 30 teams. Connor McDavid, 2015-16, 29th out of 30 teams. So Bedard's going to be great, but is it going to lead to instant success? Now, you might say, hey, what about the Toronto Maple Leafs with Austin Matthews? Okay, that's possible. But even Ovi was 27th with Washington when he came in. There's a reason the team picks first. It's because usually they're a bad team the year before, and it's tough to have a major turnaround. I think they can improve by 15, maybe 18 points, which is still a really big improvement, but I don't see them being a playoff team. And I'm not sure that they're not going to finish last in their division, Frank. I still have them finishing last because I think the Arizona Coyotes are going to improve. I'm not buying the hype that the Coyotes are going to be massively improved, but I do think the Coyotes will be improved enough next season that they'll be able to stave off Chicago catching them in the bottom of that division.
So here's what's interesting about what you just said, those two stats about the Penguins in 2006 finishing 29th and the Oilers in 2016 finishing 29th. Both teams the next year made the playoffs.
Yep.
The following year. So it is possible to have this be the intermediate step. And one other stat that I want to point out, because I want from you a point total prediction and a goal prediction for Connor Bedard. Sidney Crosby in that dreadful Penguins season when they finished 29th, they had 58 points that year. They changed coaches halfway through the year. Eddie Olczyk out, Michel Therrien in. Mario Lemieux still on the team. But Sidney Crosby steps into the league as an 18-year-old. And that year was a little bit crazy because of all the power plays. So goal scoring was way up. But Crosby has 39 goals and 102 points. I'm saying this year, Connor Bedard, north of 100.
I know our daily face-off previews come out, and I actually had Bedard at 79, which I still think is great. It's hard to score, but you're right, Crosby. That year was a little bit different because of all the power plays and such. Like, we're talking like 150 more power plays per team than what we see right now, which is crazy. And so that's a lot more goals. Connor McDavid had 48 points in 45 games, which puts him at around an 87, 88 point pace. So injuries obviously are a factor, the amount of offense. And I just like Chicago. Now, you mentioned Taylor Hall. That's a big advantage, right? Like Taylor Hall's a legit top 6 player in my eyes. And I think it's Ryan Donato who's been playing with him. And Donato, well, he's got a lot of warts to his game. He does know how to finish. So I think Bedard will be all right. But I mean, man, I hope he scores 100 points. I hope I undervalued it.
So Crosby didn't have anywhere near the help that Bedard has this year. Mark Recchi was a good player then. He was 37. He had 57 points. John LeClaire was 36. He had 51. The second leading scorer on the Penguins that year was Sergei Gonchar on the back end.
Yeah.
Taylor Hall, like, I know the Bruins were in a cap crunch, but if you take a look at Taylor Hall's numbers last season, 36 points. He only played 61 games. It's not bad. So he's on track for a 48-point season last year. I bet you he gets close to 70. Taylor Hall.
Because the one guy I looked at that I thought was a decent comparison was, now it wasn't his
He's playing on the third line, by the way, in Boston.
Yeah, I know. And then look at his playoffs. Didn't he have 5 goals in that first round series loss? Austin Matthews, rookie year, Frank, he had 40 goals, finished with 69 points, played all 82 games, and he had Marner and Nylander. Granted, they were young. Nazem Kadri. They had some decent players. They all had 60 points combined, so that was maybe the difference. It all kind of spread around. So I hope Bedard gets 100, man. That would be unbelievable. But if he gets 100, then I think Taylor Hall's got to be close to 80 points or more.
So I come to you from Pittsburgh. That's where I'm doing today's pod. And I'm here for Connor Bedard's first NHL game on Tuesday night, which I think is kind of cool that it's against Sid and the Penguins. Here's my another bold take is that in a couple years' time, the only player in the league that's better than Connor Bedard is Connor McDavid. Meaning, I think that when he finally gets going, he's going to be at a level, very close to Sidney Crosby.
Whew. Better than McKinnon and Matthews. Wow, I like it. Draisaitl, those are some pretty good players. So
I'm telling you, this guy's that good. And I don't want, I hate to heap so much expectation and hope and thought. I really think he's that good.
Well, the more exciting elite players in the league, the better the league is. So I hope it happens. Let's go to Arizona. What do you make of the Coyotes? Here's the changes for them, and lots on defense. Dumba, Dursey, and Dermott are in the 3Ds. Then Zucker, Kerfoot, Cooley, Dylan Gunther, if he makes it up front. So lots of changes. Are you buying that the Coyotes are going to be significantly improved?
I am selling. I think they're going to be improved, but they've been a trendy playoff pick. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. I see the changes they made on their back end. I really like the Dursey trade. I think they basically got a 45-point, 24-year-old defenseman for like free 99. That trade for a second-round pick, like he should have been a first all day long on talent. And it's perfect for them. I'm not a believer in the rest of the defense core.
Yeah.
I mean, let me read you the 8 guys. Dumba, Dursey, Brown, that's Josh Brown, Troy Stetcher, Juuso Välimäki, JJ Moser, Victor Soderstrom, and Travis Dermott. Dermott is a fringe NHL player. Juuso Välimäki was a waiver claim last year. Troy Stetcher has been all over the place. Josh Brown, Dumba lingered on the free agent market forever. This defense core is kind of, I don't want to say spare parts because I think that cuts too deep, but I also don't think it's really that far off. And all 8 guys, you know what they have in common? None of them has a contract beyond this season,
which is crazy, right? You don't see that very often. My concern why I don't think the Coyotes make the playoffs is very simple. It's the trend we've seen in the NHL, Frank. Teams that win have massive defense cores. Not everyone, but they have one D-man over 6'2", and that's Josh Brown at 6'5". All right, Välimäki 6'2". That's it. And I just size, you don't cover as much space in today's NHL, just wingspan, everything like that. You got to reach more to defend. I think that's going to be an issue. I think, I really like Clayton Keller. I think they've got some offense coming. I'm curious to see how good Cooley's going to be this year. There's lots of hype about him. I'm
Really
excited
good
to see what he brings into to Arizona. And I see them improving, but 25-point improvement to make the playoffs, I think, is too much in a division that has lots of other teams like Calgary and Vancouver ahead of them that want to improve, even St. Louis, Nashville, who missed by 3 points. So I'll say the Coyotes finish with 80 points, but still miss the playoffs.
I think that's a really fair expectation. And I was probably a little bit hard on JJ Moser for someone that's 23 and was drafted in 2021. Yeah, good player, but still needs time. So it's another year of growth. I think they take a big step forward, probably on the back of someone like Logan Cooley this year. I think he's going to be really good. So it's an exciting time to be a Coyotes fan, but I also felt like with the pieces they added and spent, they did spend a bit this summer, and I think they're trying to push to be closer to a playoff team, to be competitive, to have something in their market to sell, because they need to put an arena together. They need to sell a municipality on an arena. I just don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Barrett Hayton, man, if he continues how he finished last season, I see why the arrows are pointing up finally in Arizona. But it's to me, it's another year away. But if Nick Schmaltz can stay healthy, him and Keller got real good chemistry. Barrett Hayton, that was a really good, that's a pretty good trio there. It's a pretty good starting point for them to at least have hope in the desert that things are on the uptick. But as you pointed out, eventually they're going to have to solidify their defense core at somehow to see where they go.
They're also going to need to get an arena. Let's be honest, that's the biggest story in Arizona this year. Gary Bettman last week at the Board of Governors meeting seemed to hint at the idea that February is their deadline. If you don't have an arena in place by then, that he said, let's see where they are. They have a decision to make. And I just can't envision the league staying in Arizona long-term at Mullet Arena. It's just not feasible.
Yeah, no, it's totally fair. I love the atmosphere there. I want to say that it's great, but it's not a long-term solution. There's no debating that. You can't have a 5,000 seat facility in an NHL. It's just not going to work. So now here, Frank, this next team, who I think last year was disappointing for where they finished, 6th in the division, that 81 points, and the St. Louis Blues. I think we're maybe one of the bigger underachievers last year. They bring in Hayes, Kapanen, and Verana, who, by the way, that guy scores goals. If he can stay healthy, chalk him up for 30 goals, man. His goal per 60 rate the last few years, he's been banged up lots, and then obviously was in the substance abuse program, the Player Association. If he is on, man, that guy can score some goals for you. But, it's a little bit of a transition. Obviously, they started last year when they moved out Tarasenko and O'Reilly in the middle of the season and Barbashev. So what do you make of the Blues? What's your biggest question mark, and where do you see them finishing?
I see them finishing 4th in the division. I think their biggest question mark is goaltending. I think on paper, that team isn't as bad as they were last year, but they couldn't get it right. I felt like it was kind of just a lost season for them from the very beginning. Ryan O'Reilly was banged up and then was never really the same. They didn't get off on the right foot. Binnington was never really good. I just think they can be better. I have them just missing the playoffs. I think they're one of the true wild card teams, meaning you don't really know what you're going to get in the league. Their defense core is obviously pretty established. Some awkwardness with Torrey Krug having, flexed the no trade muscle, which good for him in doing so. So they've got a bunch of older guys that are locked up long term, but up front with Kyrou and Thomas as the pillars and newly named captain Braden Shen, I think they've got enough pieces there to be dangerous. You mentioned Verana and the goal scoring. It's not Kenny. It's just Kenny walk the straight and narrow. He hasn't been able to do that in the eyes of the Detroit Red Wings, who shipped him off for nothing. And they've got a bunch of other kind of hope bets. Kasperi Kapanen, another guy that needs to rejuvenate his career. Kevin Hayes comes in at half price. And I think you mentioned this before. Half price for Kevin Hayes, $3.5 million. You're going to be thrilled. That's like,
yeah,
that's the perfect place for Kevin Hayes. So I think they've got some upside. I think they're a curious team, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see the St. Louis Blues get to November or December and have Joel Hofer take over and be starting most of their games.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Frank. That's the question mark is Jordan Binnington like, hey, it was unbelievable when they won the Stanley Cup. That's many years ago. We're talking 5 years now. So he's got 4 years left on his deal at $6 million. Hofer's got 2 years at $775, but they're at the point now where salary cap doesn't matter. If you're going to play better, then you play. And for the next 2 years, if you have 6.75 in your goaltenders, regardless of who's paying who, get good goaltending. It doesn't matter who's in net. And I think that's a big key for them. The Krug situation, you know what? Like anything, maybe it's not ideal. He had mentioned it that they tried to trade him. He said, no, I want to be there. So, we'll see. Other guys have asked for trades. It didn't work out. And then they stayed there and it lasted a long time. This is a little bit different because obviously he vetoed the trade, but like the Blues to me on paper, like when you look at their defense now, the change in their defense was they went from that hulking blue line when they won and they got a lot smaller, right? And Falk and Krug and Nick Leddy just aren't the same, as Pietrangelo or Jay Bouwmeester in size, right? They're just different. And so I look at their back end. I still think they're good, but it's more so up front. Like Kyrou and Thomas have been pretty consistent up front. Can they take the next step now? Right? Like they
got to get to the next level.
Guys. Yes, they're the main guys. And can they become 85-point players? That I think is the key. And then the wild card for me, honestly, is Jacob Vrana. How well can he play? Because if he scores 30 goals and he plays I'm not surprised if he plays all year because that guy knows how to score goals.
I mean, we talked about this last year when he went on waivers. Goals per 60. He's like, since he joined the league, is only like Alex Ovechkin is ahead of him. Relative to minutes played, he scores a lot.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's had some off-ice issues and hasn't been able to get it together. And I mean, the fact that the Red Wings retained half and traded him for nothing should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know what? Guys need to change the scenery. And Detroit felt like, hey, it wasn't working there. So away you go. And I wish him luck off the ice. Hope everything's good there. And if he can stay healthy, he might be a surprise for the Blues. I'm with you, though. I have them missing the playoffs. I think I have them actually 5th in the division.
So what about wait. What about Edmonton Oil King Jake Neighbors?
Well, Neighbors played what? I think half the year there last year, 43 games or something like that. I think Neighbors. Yeah, I think he's really, Frank. I look at Jake Neighbors as a third-line player. Right? He's not a top 6 just yet. I wouldn't have him as somebody I would pencil in my top 6. I think he could be a solid third-line player. He's strong. You'd like to get a bit quicker, and that's obviously what you can say that about a lot of players. But when Jake Neighbors is on his game, he kind of fits how the Blues style is. Right? He's a little bit robust. Greasy goals. That's kind of what he is. He's not a guy that's going to overwhelm you by scoring from distance all the time. It's not really his. Not that there's many guys in the league that can do that, but I have Jake Neighbors. If he's on their third line and contributes, I think that's a good year for him.
Okay. 2020 first round pick. Like he's a guy that they're counting on to take another step.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that would be a good step for him, like a realistic step, being a full-timer every game and solid third line guy who can moonlight when you get some injuries into your top 6. Now the Nashville Predators, Frank, and man, there's been some big changes in Nashville. Duchesne bought out, Granlund's gone. Obviously, Johansson's gone. You look at Jankowski, McCarron. Now they traded Jeannot late last year, so they got a lot of changes. They bring in Ryan O'Reilly, who's has got a great character. Everybody knows kind of what he brings. Nyquist, Gurionov might be a real bargain basement. We'll see if he can find his game. And then really, they're hoping the young guys last year, right? Evangelista and Tomasino, who down the stretch played really well. So the question in Nashville will be, was that a 20-game heater or can those young guys continue it?
I tend to lean more towards a 20-game heater, but we'll see. They also claimed Samuel Fagemo off waivers from the LA Kings, a guy with some pedigree and was really highly thought after. Here's the thing with the Preds. I don't think they're going to be worse, but I also don't. I shouldn't say much worse. I definitely don't think they got better. Just look at the sheer talent that they traded away at the deadline. I mean, 5 really critical pieces, plus then the guys that they bought out, or moved. They lost a lot of talent, but I think what they'll make up for this year, and also with the coaching change, is a culture change. Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson, they're not back because Barry Trotz wanted to get back to the Predators' way. And I think it's fair to say that the last couple years, as they were chasing and trying to hang on to the success that they had in the middle part of the decade and getting to that Stanley Cup final, they were trying so hard to get back there that I think they lost sight of what they were trying to build to begin with. And so this is a bit of a reset. I do not have the Preds as a playoff team. I don't want to spoil it, but I think only 3 teams from the Central make it, and we'll get to those in a bit. But I see this as a year of, it's an awkward transition because they still have a really good goalie in UC Saros, and they still have a defenseman that's Norris caliber and Roman Josi. But outside of that, I see a team that's really going to struggle to score.
Well, hey, 100%, man. I actually like their blue line overall. I think they can move the puck well. I think they got, Ryan McDonough is not what he was when he was winning Stanley Cups, but he's still a pretty good player. Tyson Barrie, I think, is fine. Obviously, Roman Josi's elite. UC Saros, I think most of us would have him as top 5 goalie in the league, but where's their offense? And that's why they're going to have some of those young guys continue on. They're going to have to hope that Cody Glass takes another step, that Ryan Riley can be a big leader. But here's the thing, Frank. Their highest pay, like after Forsberg, right? Because he's obviously their offensive leader. Their next highest paid forward is Ryan O'Reilly at $4.5 million. Like they just don't have a lot of guys that even the salary cap would suggest they're expecting offense from.
It's a tough place to be. I mean, this game is kind of more reliant on offense than ever before. Like I said, they've got a guy that can keep the puck out of the net and hold their head above water, but who's going to get them further than that?
As I outlined earlier, Frank, the last 4 years, combined point totals, teams that are in the top 10, 8 of them are also top 10 in goals for, and only 5 of them are in goals against top 10. So it's still offense in today's NHL in the regular season definitely is a big factor if you want to win games. And I think that's going to be the struggle for Nashville. Now, maybe they can get a lot of guys having career years that, kind of like Seattle last year. That's what I think they're going to have to hope for. That's got to be their game plan. Because they, outside of Forsberg, they don't really have any high-end proven offensive scorers.
And that's where they're at. But I like that Barry Trotz is coming in and saying enough. Andrew Brunette, there's no nonsense there. Yeah. But it's essentially, we think we're better off without some of the guys that we had here, quite clearly making a statement that he felt like they really just weren't good and conducive to winning.
Yeah. So I think Nashville will work hard. I think they'll be tough to score against, but ultimately scoring is going to be their downfall. And I'm like you, I don't have them as a playoff team. They had 92 points last year. I actually see them sliding back into the 80s this year for the Preds.
Yeah, I see them around 85.
No. We are halfway through the Central, so we welcome in Tyler Yaremchuk. Ty, how you doing?
I'm good, gentlemen, and I'm ready to roll with a fresh edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Betano, Central Division-themed edition of the game. And I got you guys doing similar to what I did a couple of weeks ago. You're going to try guess some percentages here based on what our friends at Betano are throwing out there. But for the first one, we'll go a little different. You talked about the Blues and Preds. Neither of you have them as a playoff team, but between the Blues and Preds, blank will finish with more points this year, Frank.
I got the Blues. I just think they're a more complete team. Big question mark about their goaltending, but I think they're more well-rounded than the Preds.
It's a really good question because I think it's going to be close. Last year, I think the gap was what, like 11 points, 10 or 11, memory serves me. So I will say it's the Blues, but only by like 4 points.
Anno has it at dead 50-50. It is a pick'em between the Blues and Preds for who will finish higher in the standings this year. Up next, a couple of teams you guys haven't talked about yet. The Minnesota Wild are up first on my list. There is a blank % chance that the Minnesota Wild hit 100 points this year. Gregor, what do you say?
I'll say pretty good. So I'll say like 71. It's not a great start by losing your captain here for a bit.
Odd number.
So that might limit him a bit, but I will, I'll say, you know what? I might even say 75. Pretty good, but like you could have a good year and still only have 99, 98 points.
Frank?
I think it's closer to 55 or 60. I just don't know if their defense is really as good as it once was. And I think Spurgeon being out for the start of the year is going to hurt. They're asking a lot of Philip Gustafsson. I don't want to do the whole Wild preview now, but yeah, I think they're probably somewhere in the 97 to 102 range.
So Betano is actually a little bit lower on them, or the books, I should say, are a little bit lower on them than you guys. They have it at 47%. So it's paying out about plus 110 on the Minnesota Wild to hit the 100-point mark this season. A couple of more for you based on the Avs and Stars. We'll start with Colorado. Frank, there is a blank % chance that Colorado wins the West in the regular season.
50%.
50? You're that high, hey? You think they're a lock to basically win their division then?
Yeah, I not a lock, but I think they're like a 50 to 52% chance, something like that. I think they're going to be really, really good.
All right, Jay.
Well, I really only see 3 teams and probably 2. It's them or Dallas. I don't see Minnesota competing for the division title. So,
but it's win the West.
Win the West.
Oh, sorry.
Win the West in the regular season.
I will. That I would say it's a little bit lower because I think there might be 3 teams. So I will say 32%.
All right. They have a 20% chance, according to Betano, coming in at 4-1. Next up, same question. But what about for the Dallas Stars? % chance you think the Stars can win the West? Maybe overtake the Avs for that top spot in the Central and beat out the Pacific teams, Jay?
Well, if the Avs are 20, I can't see the Stars being higher, although I like Dallas. But although Dallas's roster, man, you look at their defense and goaltending, like Colorado made a lot of changes. You know what? I'm going to say Dallas is probably the same odds. I'll say 20%.
All right, Frank?
Yeah, I think it's like 30 something.
All right, 12.5%. They're coming in at 7-1 to win the Western Conference. They're also plus 175 to win the Central. Colorado comes in at plus 135 to win the Central Division. And
who's the favorite to win the West?
The favorite to win the West is Colorado at 4-1. I believe both of them and Edmonton are even at 4-1.
The odds were really good, at least from what I was looking at. Betano in the last few days were really good for Vegas, meaning the books really like Vegas to be good again.
Sorry, Vegas is in that group as well. So Edmonton, Colorado, and Vegas are all 4-1, and then it drops to Dallas at 7-1, LA at 8-1 to win the West this year.
I actually think there's really good value on Colorado and Dallas.
Yeah.
Because we just, you can go back and work through our Pacific Division preview. I just think it's a harder division than the Central. I think there's a lot of mushy middle in the Central, and I think that should theoretically mean more points for the teams in the Central. And if one of those 2 teams can distinguish themselves, then you've probably got a really good shot to win the West.
All right. There you go, guys. That's a wrap on this week's edition of Fill in the Blank, brought to you by Betano.
I'm excited, man. 1 day away. Tomorrow, the NHL regular season is back. I can't wait. There's 3 games. Pumped. And then to get going. Oh,
can I give you a fill in the blank? And I want to bring Tyler back for this. Your favorite Thanksgiving dish is?
Oh, pumpkin pie. Fresh pumpkin pie and fresh farm whipped cream. Because if you haven't had farm whipped cream, you don't know it. And so I apologize for anybody who's never had it. Your taste buds, you've been living a life unfulfilled. to this point, but you get fresh cream from the cow and you whip it. I'm telling you guys, it's as Struddy would say, it's a bouquet of flavors coming in your mouth. That's how he likes to describe it.
Literally coming in your mouth.
I am going to go with I love mashed potatoes and stuffing and mixing the two together and just covering it in gravy.
Really?
Like oh man.
Mixing the two of them together?
Oh, and it's like slop too. Like it does not look appetizing at all, but it is so good. Like that is honestly what I look forward to the most about the Thanksgiving dinner.
So here's my hot take on Thanksgiving. The dinner's overrated.
Then
the holiday is good, but the dinner itself is overrated because if it was good, we would eat it more than once a year.
But it takes so much effort, which is the problem.
Yeah. Turkey. Although we eat ham quite. See, we got ham now. It's kind of mixed in the ham, which we eat quite a bit during the year now. But yeah, let's finish off. We have 4 teams remaining in the Central. So we have we all agree. Arizona, Chicago, Nashville, and St. Louis out. We have Nashville and St. Louis swapping positions this year in the seeding. So it comes to the Winnipeg Jets. That a pretty eventful offseason. Wheeler
kind of not really.
Well, but Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler, like that's 2 of your top 6 forwards out. Like that's pretty significant for most teams. Iafallo, Velarde, Kupari are in, but there was some thought maybe they would do Scheifele, maybe they would move out Hellebuck, which are hard to do. So I kind of see the Jets as a unique team, Frank. And what are they going to do? Like if they're not in a locked spot at the deadline for playoffs, they got to trade one, if not both those guys away and risk losing them for nothing. And right, they have to, don't they?
Yeah, I would say no matter what it is that you're getting for either player at that point, you've got to do it. And I would add in Nino Niederreiter to the mix as well. Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon, they're all guys that are pending UFAs that you should be able to try and restock the cupboard with. The Jets don't have very many extra picks. They'd been in, compete mode. So they've generally drafted really well once they've had picks, but don't have very many and haven't for a while and had been picking so low. The Jets are a fascinating team because they still have some pieces. You mentioned Scheifele coming off of a career year in goals, but Nikolai Ehlers is an elite player. Kyle Connor is an elite player. Josh Morrissey had a 70-plus point year as a defenseman, and they have a multi-time Vezina Trophy finalist. So, I just think for me, when I look at this Jets team, and this is a playoff team last year, we know the changes that are hanging over their head. It kind of feels like, they're on a set of wheels that's going down a highway with like one lug nut still on it, where they're just kind of, if that falls off, all the wheels might fall off. And I could just see it going sideways, but I could also see them kind of hanging in there and competing.
Well, I think they'll compete because I think they have enough skill. Like obviously they've got an elite goalie in Hellebuck. I don't love their defense, Frank, and that's where I think ultimately they don't make it. But I look up front. I actually think they got good depth now with those trades, right? They still got Connor and Scheifele and Ehlers, Iafallo, Niederreiter, Velarde, Lowry, Appleton. They got a pretty good top 9. But I don't love their defense. Like Josh Morrissey, hey, he's got to continue on. Like he came out of nowhere to the level he was last year. But, Pionk's solid. Schmidt's solid. Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon and then Dylan DeMello. They're good, but I don't know. Like for some reason, they don't wow me. I guess they're just steady. But I just look at the Jets and I think they're close. I think they're going to be right around the hunt, and that's going to be the challenge for the Jets organization. Is I don't see them being so comfortable in a playoff spot at the deadline, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think they'll be more like in the hunt, either in by a point or two or out by a point or two. And then what do?
I think either way, if that's the case, you have to make moves. Unless you're firmly a playoff team, like in by 5 or 7 points, and you've shown that you can really be something. To me, the biggest thing that's held the Winnipeg Jets back for the last few years from really making more seismic changes has been this belief that this team, it's not really, I kind of view them as the New York Islanders of the West. And that's not to throw shade. It's just that no one really looks at this team now and says they're a Stanley Cup contender or a true threat. They haven't gotten over the hump, and they're still kind of living and relying on, oh, well, we went to the Western Conference Final in 2018 with a lot of these same pieces. We have a competitive team. Competitive to do what? Not to contend for a cup. You might be a competitive team to be a playoff team, and maybe in a market like Winnipeg, as small as it is. And I love Winnipeg. Maybe that's what you need business-wise. I don't know what their mission and mandate is. All I'm saying is we've now sort of reached the end of the road for this core. You need change. They started to do some of that, but I think the real miss this summer is in not completing the rest of it. You took out Dubois, you took out Wheeler. The rest of it kind of needs to happen. And by delaying it another season, you've really only kind of delayed to get where you need to get to. That's how I view it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's totally valid. So, and it's tough for a lot of teams when you're good, but you're not great, because it's hard to go from good to just tank to try to get those few years of great players, right? Like, you got to commit to saying, we're going to suck for 5 or 6 years. Right? Like, that's just kind of the harsh reality of it. Like, if you look at the teams who are competitive, most of them have top 5 picks on their team, if not multiple. Right. And that's the challenge, I think, for the Jets. They've never, like, they had Scheifele. He's turned out to be an excellent 7th overall pick. Kyle Connor was an unbelievable pick at, was he 17th? So, you know what? They made good Nikolai Ehlers. They made good picks.
I said they've drafted well.
Yeah. Josh Morrissey. So it's too bad, but yeah, you know what? Yeah, they'll kind of have to retool. And then even then, if they get rid of Scheifele and Hellebuck, they still got enough good players that I don't see them as a bottom 5 team. Then they're stuck in purgatory, which is brutal. Like, they might have to just tear the whole thing down. And that's hard to do when you have that many decent players.
And that's kind of why they're stuck in the middle. That the Islanders, if I'm going to continue to make the comparison, they went to back-to-back conference finals, and they're like, okay, our players just haven't played well enough, is the way you explained it last week. Like the Islanders, they have a goalie that's kind of probably propped up their team and made them a little bit better than they should be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Let's get now to the Minnesota Wild, who, of course, finished 3rd in the Central last year. Really good season, 46 wins, 103 points. They made a few moves in the offseason, not many. Marco Rossi comes in, Pat Maroon's in, Reeves and Steele. John Klingberg, I guess, would be probably the biggest exit for them. They replaced him basically internally. They had lots of defensemen. They're hoping Addison can take another step this year. Also, Dumba leaves that squad. I look at Minnesota, and I'm so impressed, Frank, that they're essentially like competing with the top dogs despite having $14 million in dead cap space. Like, it's impressive what Bill Guerin's been able to do. Coaching staff, the players, like, they buy in, they play incredibly hard despite being at a significant advantage with 14, and it's really close to 14.7 mil in dead cap space. And they have it this year and next year. And if they can just hang around, then, you know what? I look at the Wild, and you know what? They could be a team to reckon with, because they built a competitive culture there.
Well, and that's what we were talking to Bill Guerin about at the end of last season, which was just hang on for these next 2 years, and then you can really kind of create something magical. I think they're on the right track. I think they're going to be really competitive again. I do think the defense core gets a little bit thin. I do think they still need more support down the middle. That said, they also need Philip Gustafsson to have a pretty similar year that he had last year, which I don't want to say was out of the clear blue sky, but was like pretty close to that for a guy that spent a big chunk of the previous season in the AHL. And when he did play in the NHL for a quarter of the year, was sub 900 in Ottawa. That trade was an absolute boon for Minnesota. Cam Talbot, of course, was injured for the bulk of the year in Ottawa. Gustafsson now goes from, a pretty lean cap hit at 787.5 to a big raise this year at 375, chewing up some of that precious cap space for this team. I think the Wild are a solid playoff team, but I think the bigger question for Ottawa or for Minnesota is, did I say Ottawa?
Yeah.
The bigger question for Minnesota is, can they vault from competitive team into contender status? And I think they're short of that.
I would agree. I think Minnesota is the one team, Frank, that I have in the playoff spot that I wouldn't be shocked if they end up getting caught by Winnipeg or St. Louis, because you know what, injuries, we know, and one injury, I like how competitive they are, but they're young on the back end now, losing Klingberg and Dumba. That's a lot of experience, right? Brock Faber is a young defenseman. There's lots of high in him. Addison, the same thing, but young D-men, it's tough sometimes, Cale Makar excluded, right? It's tough. Owen Power, I guess, but it's tough for those guys to really elevate big minutes. So I think that's Minnesota. Their culture probably allows them to be competitive, but I don't see them. I think they're a playoff team, but I don't see them as a cup contender.
And I would say one thing to keep in mind for Minnesota for this season is, can they be more consistent? They had way too many ups and downs, peaks and valleys last year. For a stretch of time, they couldn't score into the ocean. They were frustrated, but also for a stretch of time, they couldn't lose. So how do they find some even keel?
Now the top two teams. Dallas Stars, very good season last year. 108 points, 47 wins. And you know what? They can score. Joe Pavelski continues to roll for them. And they, you know what? Not any major, they bring in Matt Duchene, Craig Smith, Sam Steele, Nils Lundqvist looks to be a regular. Colin Miller's out on the back end, Glenn Denning, Kiviranta, and Domi, although he was out late in the year anyway. Duchene at $3 million, Frank, could be a hell of a bargain for them.
I think he will be. I think it was one of the great pickups. And let me say this, because I don't want to feel like I'm burying the lead here. The Dallas Stars are my pick to win the Stanley Cup this year.
Ooh.
I don't know if their regular season is going to be all that much to behold. I think they're well over 100 points. Don't know if they'll win the division or the West. And here's the point. In the regular season, it doesn't matter. The reason why the Stars for me are my pick to win the cup is they're battle tested. And I think they're one of the few teams in the league that, with where they are and how they play, their game is directly translatable to the playoffs. There is a heaviness to their game, in addition to speed and mobility and creativity, that I think suits them really well. And I look at this Stars team and I say, there aren't really any holes here.
No. I'll be stunned if Colorado and Dallas don't meet in the second round of the playoffs.
Me too.
Yeah. I think they're that good.
And I've got like I think Rupe Hintz, for instance, I think he takes a step from 75 points to 100 points.
Nah. You know what? I really like Rupe Hintz. I think he's one of the more underrated players maybe around, or maybe underappreciated. Underrated is probably unfair, but underappreciated, just how many things he does well all over the ice. And, Jamie Benn had a pretty big bounce back season last year. Jason Robertson, what do you have? 108, 109 points with Dallas. Like, they've got, high offensive guy. I think they had 5 70-point players last year. I wonder if Tyler Seguin can get back, because now he didn't have a terrible year, but 50 points for him, like, he should still be a 70-point player in my eyes. So Dallas has a lot to offer, and I think that's going to be a great battle. 1-2.
We didn't even mention their back end or their goalie.
Oh,
I mean, that's how good they are. Is that, like, I think that's the easiest way to say it too, is they just, there's nothing about this team that I look at and I go, man, that is an absolute wild card or big question mark. There's maybe 3 or 4 teams in the league that I don't have a question like that for, and the Stars are one of them. Yeah,
no, Jake Ottinger, obviously, but Heiskanen and Lindell and Hakanpää, man, Ryan Suter, although he's getting older, but he's still decent. I'm very curious to watch Nils Lundqvist this season. with Dallas, right? And you know what he did play. What he played 60 games last year. I like him, Frank. He's my surprise pick to kind of be a breakout defenseman. Surprise, probably the wrong word. He's my pick to be a breakout defenseman this year in the NHL.
I like that. I think that's a great pick. And look at some of the young players that they've had contribute to their team. You see Wyatt Johnson in his rookie year. They've gotten contributions from guys that are that age.
Yeah. Mason Marchment, you know, they got, like, look at the depth in Dallas, man. Like, they got 10, 11 forwards deep. They're pretty solid, which leaves us to the last team. They had 109 points last year, but man, talk about a massive amount of changeover for a team that had 109 points. Like, look, Rodrigue, Newhook, Comfer, Malgin, Nieto, Eller, gone. Johansson, Colton, Wood, Tatar, Drouin, Olofsson are in. Now, obviously, Eric Johnson also out on the back end, but that's like 6 forwards, Frank. That's significant change for a team that had 109 points.
It is, but they also really struggled last year. Cale Makar missed 22 games. Obviously, they were in a spot where, you know, Landeskog missed the year, and he's going to miss the year again. Yeah. I think the Johansson addition will be nice to help them down the middle. I think that was one place that they were really lacking last year. And I also think, you know, while there are question marks about Valeri Nichushkin and the way that he exited the playoffs and under those murky circumstances and conditions, this team and their back end is good enough. I think their defense core is second only to the Carolina Hurricanes. They're that good. I just think this team's really well structured. They're the speed they have, the size that they have in most positions. They're in a good spot.
Oh yeah. Hey, the thing is, last year they really relied on their star guys like Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon. They carried them offensively. Now Nichushkin, you know, injuries and whatever else, that was a factor for sure. You mentioned Cale Makar, so it's
injury. Was it an injury or a bender?
But he came back. The bender was in the playoffs, right? But Nichushkin missed like 35 games in the regular season.
Yeah, he missed 29 games, and I just the playoff bender to me is
he's got to prove himself.
It's unforgivable. First off, and second, it's really interesting how the Avs have tried to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, wow. You know, but it's not surprising, unfortunately, in today's world. Some people are like, oh, don't bring attention to it. Don't bring attention to it. And you have to think, though, that his teammates, he's got to regain their trust.
I think that's a fair way to say it.
Yeah. So we'll see how he does, because, you know, playing well is one thing, but this was an off-ice issue where it's just like, hey, man, what's your commitment level? That's going to be the question.
So as we wrap up the Central Division preview, give me your 8 teams in order of finish.
I have Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, Winnipeg. Oh, no, St. Louis, Winnipeg, Nashville, Arizona, Chicago.
Okay, I've got Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, St. Louis, Winnipeg, Nashville, Arizona, Chicago.
Same as me.
Pretty similar.
Yeah. But you know what? And hey, we'll see as we open it up with that stat about the playoff changes from year to year. You never know. Like, if St. Louis and Winnipeg get in the playoffs this year, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Right? I don't have them in the postseason because I think both of us, Frank, we have 3 teams in the Central making the playoffs. We had 5 from the Pacific, and although we had different 5, but we each had 5. So we have Minnesota, Colorado, and Dallas as the 3 playoff teams, which would be the first time ever that the Central only has 3 teams in the playoffs.
And I think the big delineation between this year and years past is it's one thing to be a playoff team. It's another thing to be a cup contender. And whatever kind of happens on the periphery of that is what it is. It's the fickle nature of the NHL. But are the Jets or the Preds Cup contenders if they get in? Or the Blues Cup? I just don't see it.
No.
So that's where there's kind of a clear delineation for me of tiers in the division itself.
Yeah, I think the top 2 teams in each division, Vegas, Edmonton, Dallas, Colorado, are legit Cup contenders. Then there's just a step below for the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Frank, have yourself a great day. Enjoy the Connor Bedard NHL debut in Pittsburgh. We will have the Atlantic Division preview on the next DFO Rundown. Be safe. I'm going to have Thanksgiving Day brunch, so I'm getting out of
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for watching the DFO Rundown. Hit the subscribe button to never miss a show. And for more, visit dailyfaceoff.com.